Welcome back. So now we're going to be doing Nehemiah chapter 6. It's only a few verses, it's not long. So we're definitely going to be able to finish this chapter. The next chapter is pretty long. So if we even start it tonight, I'm not sure we'll be able to finish it. Probably not for tonight. But let's focus first on Nehemiah chapter 6. This is the final chapter where we have those Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, who, as we said before, the sons of Haman, the 10 sons who were executed in the Book of Esther, they were slandering the Jews in the Holy Land, in the right before the Second Temple Commonwealth,
Okay,
and
Rabbi, if I may interrupt, I apologize for my
mhm.
interruption.
Oh,
Uh, there
yes, Mark.
there was a question I was trying to ask during uh the the short presentation
Okay, so
that
all right.
okay uh that and and it came in with the corruption of the text of the Tanakh with the mixing with the New Testament. And I heard this and I I heard this and it was like, wait a minute. And I know this may be off topic and I apologize. But it was like, how can the Torah coincide with the New Testament? I found that completely illogical. And that's when it seemed to come into a part of that I was wanting to broach on. And I'm like, no, that's not right.
Right. I mean, from a Torah perspective, the New Testament is heresy. It got worse as it went along. Like, for example, in the early books, there were less things that were heretical, and the farther it branched off from what had been a reform movement of Judaism, uh, the worse the heresy became.
Okay.
Obviously, Trinity is idolatry to the Jewish philosophy.
Oh,
The
definitely.
philosophy it's Tanakh, uh,
Yes.
and but it's not 100% idolatry from a Gentile perspective. So this explains why, for example, you may see Jews working together, for example, with Christians, such as they both opposing abortion together, right? So
All right.
the heresy of abortion is worse for everyone than the heresy of the New Testament is for Christians.
Okay.
But the heresy of New Testament for Jews is also as bad as abortion because it's one of the cardinal sins: idolatry, bloodshed, and immorality. So
Okay.
abortion is bloodshed.
Okay.
Generally
I,
speaking, an exception to the rule was discussed in the Talmud, and of course, it's misquoted as an excuse to have an open season on cute little babies. God help us. But the basically thing is this: is that again, anyone could write any kind of story they want to, but they cannot presume to say it in the name of God without foundation, and that's the problem. Book after book of the New Testament was brought to the Sanhedrin at first, and it was rejected. And then they didn't even bother to go to the Sanhedrin. They had just established their own church. So
okay.
it's it's
Uh,
it's it's basically seeing like Korah's rebellion over the span of a couple hundred years, right? Instead of just one urgent attempt to try to change the Torah in real time
Okay.
in the numbers.
Because that I found it really ironic
Mhm.
and it, uh, not one to. I don't disagree. I do my best not to disagree with my mother, but she said she loves the Old Testament and uh, that she is Nakri. Um, and it's like what we do is we read a passage in the Old Testament, then find it a corresponding a corresponding passage in the New Testament, and I'm like, uh, no. And she she got offended, and I'm like, I look, I'm not, I'm just saying, all right, and I just shut my mouth because I knew where it was going to go.
Very good. You know, if you're speaking a Torah question, you don't have to shut your mouth. It's a good thing. Thank you. Okay, but let's try to stay on topic.
Oh,
Because we
thank
already
you.
had a mini class already. We want to make sure to cover at least one chapter of Nehemiah tonight. So
I
both
appreciate your
Nehemiah
time.
and Nehemiah chapter 6. We have the three antagonists started from chapter 2. We're now in chapter 6. Still the same three guys of Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem are causing trouble in the Holy Land. They were fulfilling the plot that was hatched by the 10 sons of Haman who were killed in the um, executed in the book of Esther. So they're constantly causing trouble. The Jews had to in the previous chapters they set up under Nehemiah's leadership. He was the governor of Judea in that time. So they set up watchmen with swords. But until Nehemiah, for the previous two governors, there was no permission by the Persian authorities to build a wall in Jerusalem because people slandered that these people slandered that the enemies we mentioned that the Jews would be rebelling if they were building a wall. It would be a sign that they were rebelling. But because there was no wall, so there was constant attacks until Nehemiah posted guards during the construction of and repair of the temple. So now the temple was built, but now people were there were raiding parties attacking. So then now they had to build the wall. Nehemiah got permission from the Persian king Darius II, the Persian, to build the wall of Jerusalem, and that's what they did. But they had to. The verse describes it that they had to do it while holding a sword in one hand and carrying the building materials in the other hand. That's how constant threat there was going on, and the wall was destroyed in many areas. So, and we saw a map previously. I guess I'll show it again now for those who didn't see this in the earlier class. Here in the white edition of the ArtScroll Tanakh series on Nehemiah. So the map of Jerusalem, the part in gray is the current border. The part in gray is the current border of Jerusalem, of the old city of Jerusalem. The part in white is the additional part that was there in the days of Nehemiah. So it was twice as big as the current old city, and all that wall they had to rebuild while under constant threat of attack. In a day before there was, bulldozers and cranes and payloaders, etc. So and holding a sword in one hand and doing the work with another. So pretty daunting. Okay, so now this chapter represents the conclusion of the threat against the Second Temple era. Here we will see the the failure of the enemies of Israel to stop them from rebuilding Jerusalem and the temple. Once Jerusalem's wall was solid, so then there were no more enemies um, until the Persians fell with the Greek Empire and then with the Roman Empire. Okay, so this is a short chapter, but it's pivotal because here is the end of the turbulence that kept the Second Temple era from being established. Okay, very significant historically. Thank God. Okay,
Wait,
all right. So you had a question, Elias?
yeah.
Yes.
So the question is, um, did the why didn't the Persian Empire protect the second base of Mikdash that King Darius built? Why didn't
Persian Empire
yeah
defend the base of Mikdash.
the second base of Mikdash that
Right.
King Darius built, King Darius the third built
Well,
um uh after during the era of the Roman Empire.
right. Well, I mean, the Persians fell to the Greeks, so they were destroyed as an empire. The Greeks became the rulers, and that led to the conflict that led to the Hanukkah story, the Maccabee revolt, and then eventually the temple was destroyed by the Romans after the Greeks were conquered. So Alexander the Great actually uh, befriended the high priest of Israel, but after he died in his 30s, so then the the Greek Empire was divided into four parts, and the Assyrian Greek Empire was taken over by some bad guys, and they became the nemesis to the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, and we have the story of Hanukkah from there. Then the Greek Empire was booted out by the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire also eventually put down the Jewish settlement there as a separate country. Uh, Throughout history, there was always Jews living in the Holy Land, but not as a government. That ended with the beginning of the Roman Empire again. But thank God, guess what? we're at a new point in history and a new point of renewal. Thank God things are getting better and better. Okay.
Because today Donald Trump and Netanyahu have reunited to kill the virus.
Well, this is the thing about Trump. Okay, now, um, it's he is, he has a couple flaws people pointed out, but he actually is benefited Israel more than Cyrus the Great benefited the Israel. We already spoke about it before. Cyrus the Great did several things, such as limiting the size of the temple. It couldn't be built as big as it was, not allowing the defense wall of Jerusalem to be built, and halting the support of the building of the temple uh, because of slander, rather than trying to disprove or prove the slander. There was no trial. It was simply accepting the slander. You understand? So Cyrus the Great just made a decree, but then he halted implementation. Achashverosh uh, completely altered the implementation to the effect that he took the vessels of the Holy Temple and used them for his personal banquets. Very disrespectful. And then it was Darius, Ahasuerus' son from Esther, who allowed the rebuilding of the temple. So, but he was only fulfilling the decree of Cyrus, and the decree of Cyrus had a couple flaws in it. One of which is being concluded here with with the building of the wall by Nehemiah. But the second flaw about the size of the temple being limited, that would not be fixed until the reign of Herod. After Herod uh, went crazy and started to kill the good guys, eventually he calmed from his wrath, and he asked how can he asked the sages of Israel how can he repent, because he shed so much blood. And they so he said, you took light from the world, so increase light in the world. So he made the temple of Ezra and Zerubbabel, which was very small, into a big temple, bigger than the Temple of Solomon. So and so actually we saw before, when the elders were children at the time of the first temple saw the second temple being built, they were weeping because it was so small. It was not even a complete rebuilding. So in a sense, it was, for those who remember in America when the World Trade Center was destroyed, many people in New York were upset that they were only rebuilding one tower, not two towers. At least the one tower they made taller from the. I personally don't like extremely tall buildings, but okay, whatever. The main thing is that they tried to make at least one tower better than either of the old towers. But the problem is they didn't restore what was taken away from people violently. So that's the reason why the elders were crying when the second temple was being built, because the limitations of Cyrus, who was told by the prophet that he was the one destined to be the rebuilder of the temple, his limitations, arbitrarily making limitations like on God's temple, they made the temple into less of an honor to God than it should have been. Whereas with Trump, he completely defended Israel's rights to keep the strategic Golan Heights, and he completely moved the American embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. And now the the Trump position on Golan Heights is legally more important than his recognition of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem, it's recognized throughout history as the capital of Israel. But the Golan Heights, it could be a matter of great danger to Israel if they had to give the land over to the uh, to the violent Assad regime. And now there's a civil war in Syria. So imagine if, God forbid, Israel didn't have the Golan Heights, there wouldn't be a buffer zone. So Trump is, in several ways, has already surpassed Cyrus the Great. So, even if a person doesn't like Trump, if you like, uh, if you like God, so just kind of hold your tongue a bit. Criticize a bad policy, and that's it. Don't go psycho about attacking Trump, because, uh, as a messenger to fulfill God's word through natural processes. So Trump is doing us a favor that we should acknowledge. But it's all from God. The fact it took almost 2,000 years or whatever for this to happen. It's all from God, right? So thank God that the good is happening and we're not stuck in the bad forever. But now, as far as the violence going on in Israel, so God said, right before the golden calf, that if the Jews should keep the Sabbath, it's a sign between him and the Jewish people forever. So it's keeping the Sabbath would engender more blessings from heaven And there's a Gemara that says that if a person keeps the Sabbath, it's like they kept all the commandments. So keeping the Sabbath is a very important thing to enable a peaceful transition to the eternal peace of Mashiach time, and it's highly recommended. In addition, of course, the that's a productive mitzvah people could do. A prohibition people should do is um, no longer offer political or moral support for abortion. You know, we can't be cruel, as we pointed out 10 times in Tanakh. God promises to give us a redemption in the end of days with mercy. Deuteronomy chapter 30, Isaiah chapter 54, Zechariah chapter 1, Jeremiah 31 and 33. So the redemption at the end of days is connected with mercy. So we have to be merciful too. So we have to stand up with mercy for the unborn, right? There's things people could do to not have a child if they wanted to without killing the baby. And there's things they could do to put the child up for adoption if they don't want to raise the baby. But at no point should ending the life in it with torment be an option. It just shouldn't be an option. So, all right, now let's get into the verses here in Nehemiah chapter
Rabbi,
6. Another
uh,
question.
okay, Rabbi, I,
Yes.
I, I, I have a question.
Okay.
Is that on the yes, I am pro-life. Okay, I am pro-life, and however, if there is a need to for an abortion to be performed, how is that viewed upon?
Well, classically, there were rare, but it's something that occurred that there was cases where the baby would have to be their life would have to be secondary to the mother to save the mother,
Okay,
and that was permitted. But
okay,
nowadays, see, basically, whether or not there's an abortion, what the baby or the fetus or the clump of cells, whatever a person wants to call it, it's going to come out of the body anyway. There's going to be some kind of a birth. You understand?
I do.
So if there's going to be birth anyway, you know, it's just so it's just so now if the mother just became pregnant, first trimester, and she had a severe form of illness, she needed chemotherapy, and that could kill the baby. So in many cases, she'd be permitted to take the chemotherapy. That's
Okay, okay,
but in almost every case I've heard of nowadays, there's no need to kill the baby. In addition, nowadays they have these advanced incubators, so from 5 months on, a baby is viable. So in most cases where the woman is showing that she has a big stomach, so the baby's already old enough theoretically to live outside of the womb nowadays. So if she's gonna try to get rid of it, just you know let it be born, right? So now let's say a woman. Now most women nowadays, according to statistics, if they have an abortion, it's because of financial reasons. Okay, so but let's talk about a real uh, uh, so like a really narcissistic woman who really doesn't care about the child at all. Um, so she knows that the child is old enough to suffer pain, right? So her only concern is that she shouldn't have any interruption to either her job or that she shouldn't lose her figure. So before the pregnancy gets too advanced, if she theoretically she could have a early birth right before the baby gets too big, and let the doctors put it in an incubator and let it mature that way, right? But these types of thoughts are not even in the discussion. It's just like people have a crazy notion that they now's not the time for them to have a child, so they could just reboot and have a child later. But they're making this decision after there's a living being who can feel pain in their stomach. So the
Okay. Thank you,
disassociation
Rabbi.
from the oh sure. So this disassociation from the suffering of a fetus, which is a baby, that disassociation is cruelty. The cruelty is the opposite of mercy. Mercy is the vehicle for the redemption in the end of days.
Okay. I have taken extra time in the class we have started, and I appreciate uh, your answering your knowledge, and uh, I apologize
No problem.
for.
Oh, it's okay. So Teresa or Russell? Okay, so can we get a little commentary? If you could read the introduction to chapter 6 in the class curriculum, the Blue Edition Milstein style commentary on the book of Nehemiah.
Okay,
It's page 45, chapter 6.
chapter 6 returns to the subject of the narrative in chapter 4. The enemy's resistance in the establishment of a viable Jewish community centered in Jerusalem. However, let me change glasses. Okay.
Get stronger pair.
Sorry about that. However, while chapter 4 deals with the enemy's threat to the reconstruction effect, our chapter
Effort, yeah.
depicts their endeavors against Nehemiah, realizing that he was the driving force behind the dramatic rise in the fortunes of the Jewish community. They determined to destroy him.
So this is they're realizing this is their last chance to stop the Second Temple era. If they stop Nehemiah, they could uproot the Jews. So this is the uh, the climax of this threat against the Second Temple era. Okay. All right, I'll say the Hebrew and then Linda volunteer to translate. Okay. Vayika asher nishma l'sanvalat v'tovia u'legeshem ha'aravi u'liyesa oyevenu ki vanisi esachoma v'lo ba paretz gam ad ha'is hahi delasos lohem madti v'asharim v'yishlach sanvalat v'geshem elai lemar l'chavani v'ada yachdav ba'kafirim b'vikas ono v'hema hoshvim lasos li ra'a v'eshlecha alehem malachim lemor Malacha gedola ani oseh v'lo chal l'redis lama sishbas hamalacha kasher arpeha v'yiradati alechem. Hey, Linda, please translate the first 4 verses of Nehemiah chapter 6.
Now, when it was reported to Sanballat and Tobiah and to Geshem, the Arab, and to the rest of our enemies, that I had built the wall and no breach remained in it, and also that as of that time I had not yet erected doors in the gateways, Sanballat and Geshem sent word to me saying, "Come, let us meet at Sephirim in the valley of Ono." But I understood that they were planning to harm me. I sent envoys to them saying, "I'm involved in a great work and I'm able to come down. Why should the work be halted when I leave it and come down to you?" They sent
Okay,
me.
let's pause there. Okay, so that's the first 3 verses. So look at Nehemiah's reaction, right? So just consider how many times right? In recent history, the government of Israel, they were told something by United Nations or someone, and they were like jumping to try to leap through the hoop that they were holding up for Israel to jump through. After October 7th, so Israel learned that they have to have a strong policy and not follow after the whims of other nations. That's how you have an independent country. So Israel, even many of its friends, were giving it bad advice. They kept it from being an independent country, and only now we're really seeing Israel be an independent country without um, without qualification. Now we saw it before occasionally. Uh, um, for example, under Menachem Begin, the prime minister in the 1980s. Uh, he didn't care if anyone was supporting Israel or not. He was going to defend Israel. So too, we're seeing that here. Only now it's uniform as a policy. It's not just the political right who's saying it. Across the board, Israeli government agrees that they have to be independent of the whims of other nations. So here we see Nehemiah, he's implementing this policy of being independent from the political maneuvering of his enemies. So this is very interesting. It's kind of like a metaphor for our times, where if you're tough with your enemies, is it going to lead to worse danger? Because now you're the the nations hate you more, or is it going to have less danger because now the nations are no, there's no point to attack you. Okay, so let me go into the Hebrew. Let's see. Okay, actually, verse 4, starting verse 4 in the Hebrew. Vayishlchu elai kadavar hazeh arba pamim va'ashiv osam kadavar hazeh. Please translate verse 4, Linda.
They sent me this message 4 times, and I replied to them the same way.
So Nehemiah did not vacillate in his political philosophy. And he did the political philosophy that we see so far is most successful for Israel. Vayishlach elai sanvalat kadavar hazeh Pam chamishis esnaro v'geres pesucha biyado kasuv ba bagoim nishma v'gashmu omer atav haYehudim choshvim limarod al ken ata vone hachoma v'ata hoveh lahem l'melech dvarim ha'ela. Okay, please translate verses 5 and 6.
Then Sanballat sent me the same message a 5th time with his servant, with an open letter in his hand. In it was written these words: It has been heard among the nations, and Geshem confirms it, that you and the Jews plan to rebel, and that is why you are building the wall, and that you are becoming their king, and similar things.
So the slander that the sons of Haman were saying behind Israel's back is now an open policy of political pressure to Israel, and trying to create a pretext for violence. Continuing the Hebrew in verse 7. וגם נביאים העמדת לקרוא לך בירושלים לאמור מלך ביהודה ואתה יישמע למלך כדברים האלה ואתה לך אבני ועד עצה יחדיו ויש לך אליו לאמור לא נהיה כדברים האלה אשר אתה אומר Ki min libcha vodam. Please translate verses 7 and 8.
And that you have also set up prophets to proclaim about you in Jerusalem, saying, there is a king in Judah. Now these things will be heard by the king. So now come and let us take counsel together.
And 8.
I sent word to him saying, these things that you say have never happened. You have fabricated them from your heart.
Ki chulam meyorim osanu lemor yirpu idehem min hamalacha v'lo se'aseh v'ata chazek es yadoi. V'ani vasi beis Shemaya ben Delaya ben Mahetavel v'hu atzur v'yomer nivaed el beis Elohim el toch ha'hechal v'niskara dalsos ha'hechal ki baim l'hargecha v'layla baim l'hargecha. Okay, please translate verses 9 and 10.
For you all tried to frighten us, saying, let the resolve of their hands for doing the work be weakened, so that it will not be done. But now you strengthen my hand. I then came to the home of Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, son of Metabel, who was confined indoors. He said, let us meet at the temple of God inside the sanctuary, and let us close the sanctuary doors, for they are coming to kill you. Tonight they are coming to kill you.
Okay. So now, and again, they were not necessarily wrong. If Nehemiah were to be killed, uh, it could have changed everything. God could have saved Israel, of course, but just imagine only 10% of the people had moved back to the Holy Land if their leader had been slain. What would that mean to people considering moving to the Holy Land? So let's look at commentary on this verse. Okay. Okay, if you could look at Teresa on verse 10.
Verse 10, okay.
Okay, if you read the first couple paragraphs there.
I then came to the home of Shemaiah. Nehemiah then began an investigation of Shemaiah and supposed prophet who had proclaimed him king. Verse 7, that's Malbim. Rashi states that he was a false prophet claiming to speak in the name of Hashem, who had been hired by Sembalak and his cohorts as part of their plot to destroy Nehemiah. According to Malbim, it was not yet public knowledge that Shemaiah was a false prophet. Thus, Nehemiah entertained the possibility that Shemaiah prophecy, and in parentheses, that Nehemiah would become king, in parentheses, was true. That's
Okay, yeah, let's pause there. So just imagine Nehemiah is told by a possible prophet that he was to become king. In other words, maybe to become Mashiach. What a seductive argument, right? You could become the hero of the Jewish people if you just believe what we're telling you. You understand? This is not a simple test, and if he makes a mistake, it's death. Okay, let's skip down to the next paragraph where it says, "Let us meet at the temple of God." Teresa, Shemaiah.
According to Shemaiah claimed that he had been told in a prophetic vision to instruct Nehemiah to meet him at the temple. The plotters expected Nehemiah to heed the prophet's word and enter the temple where they would kill him. Rabbi. Malbim maintains that Shemaiah did not now claim prophetic knowledge. He asserted that informers had told him of the plan to murder Nehemiah and offered his personal advice to Nehemiah to meet in the temple behind the doors of the sanctuary. See commentary for verse 12.
Okay, let's go to the next page, page 48, and continuing the commentary, Teresa, and let us close the sanctuary doors. Second paragraph, page 48.
And let us
blue.
close the sanctuary doors, since the doors of the city had not yet been completed. Verse 1, see commentary. The only protection would be behind the doors of the Helkah,
Yeah.
i.e., the temple building. Rashi, Mazudos, and Malbim. Shemaiah agreed that the only,
Argued, yeah.
argued that the only safe place was in the Hakal itself. Apparently, the gates of the walls surrounded the Temple Mount and the temple courtyard had not yet been built. Commentary 2:8. For they are coming, Sanballat and his accomplices were coming
Accomplices, yeah.
from Rashi and Metzudos. Tonight they are going to kill you. In the dark of night, you will be defenseless against them. Metzudos. Tonight they are going to kill you. They read Tami.
They're coming to kill you. He didn't say they will kill you. He's saying go inside the temple and hide inside the temple to avoid being killed. But there's a problem, right? Okay, so we're going to see on the commentary to verse 11 what the problem is with this advice. V'omra ha'ish kamoni yivrachu mi chamoni asher yavo el hechal v'chai lo avo. Linda, please translate 11.
But I said, can a man like me run away? And who, being like me, may enter the sanctuary and live? I will not come.
Okay, Teresa, can you translate the commentary, page 48 on verse 11?
Can a man like me run away? I am the governor. That's training. Does a man like me show cowardice and flee? Malbin Metzudos. And who, being like me, may enter the sanctuary and live? How can a non-Cohen like myself enter the Hekal and remain alive? Nehemiah was not a Cohen. The Talmud Sanhedrin 38a identifies him as a scorn of the house of David, who was descendant from Judah. Priests are descendants from Aaron, himself a descendant of Levi. Therefore, by entering the sanctuary, he would incur the penalty of death by the hands of heaven, as Numbers 3:10 states. The stranger who approaches shall die. This verse prohibits non-Kohanim from entering the Hekal on pain of death. Rashi.
Okay, so in Tanakh speak, the Heichal refers to the place called the Holy, not the Holy of Holies. Okay, so it's a holy place. A purified priest goes there. A regular Jew shouldn't go there. Okay, so let's skip down to the next paragraph. Meshech Chachma.
Numbers 3:10 disputes this interpretation, noting that the rabbis apply that warning only to the non-Kohanim who approaches by performing the temple rituals reserved for the Kohanim. Sanhedrin 81b, 83b, Rambam Bas Hamikdash 9:1, and the Mishnah Lakamek 9:15. A non-Cohen who merely enters the sanctuary without performing the temple services is not punished with death, although he is guilty of a transgression. The Meshech Hamelech therefore offers a different translation of our verse by rendering in order to live, not simply and live. Nehemiah states that it was unbecoming for someone such as himself to enter the temple building for the purpose of living, i.e., to escape the assault of Sanballat and his
Accomplices. Yeah.
accomplices.
So the next two paragraphs talk about a variant interpretation of the book, which we sort of rejected in our previous classes. So therefore, I will codify it outside of the book to you. That according to Rabbi Mitrani and Ralbag, they believe Nehemiah was a Kohen not from a Davidic dynasty, which we disagree with, but according to their so they have to explain this differently. So according to me, Rabbi Mitrani, he was worried about Nehemiah was worried about he wasn't purified enough to come into the temple, even as a Kohen. Whereas according to Ralbag, um, uh, let's see, according to Ralbag, um,
It's saying Nehemiah is saying that he has become tainted, virtually in
coming, yeah, impure, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Ralbag goes along similar lines, apparently. Um, but his interpretation is that even a coin can't enter the Heichal under that time, only at a time for going in the service. Since it was a non-service time for non-service use, he felt uh, it would be a death penalty for that. But again, if you have to interpret a oral law, oral saying, and another oral saying, and another oral saying, just to get to the simple meaning when the simple meaning was already offered a different way. So it's in the language of Gemara that's called dochek. It's kind of a hard sell. It's easier to explain it that he's from the Davidic dynasty, just as um, we've been explaining throughout Ezra and Nehemiah. So therefore, the previous approaches um, that uh, like the Gemara Sanhedrin, and how could he go there and live because he was not a Kohen? And Meshech Chachma, he was also offered similar thing as we just read. Okay. Okay, so in either way, any way you look at it, Nehemiah recognized it would be a spiritual death penalty or a death penalty from the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court, if he took this advice, right? Now it's not so simple. Politically speaking, I'm not sure he would have, if people had a choice, right? I'm not sure people would have chosen to punish him if he was afraid for his life and he went behind the only doors that were still built. So it's not certain, but what is certain is that the fake prophet was working with Sanballat and his cronies to try to assassinate Nehemiah, either through violating a capital offense of the Hebrews, or by incurring divine wrath against him with a death penalty from heaven.
So he wasn't actually going inside the Holy of Holies. He was just going in.
Right, into the holies, not into the holy, not into the holy of holies.
It was that, is that where the showbread is and the um
Menorah.
menorahs in that area?
So you know how there's like a courtyard, right? So courtyards for all Jews.
Uh-huh.
Then there's the building itself. The front of the building is the bigger part. That's the holy, the Heichal, and the back part is Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holy of holies, which has the ark. So the front of the building itself, uh, he was told to go in there and close the doors.
Sounds like they were trying to either get him. They were trying to get him killed either way. If they didn't kill him, then the people would kill him,
right.
because
So
he had broken holy laws.
they were hoping maybe heaven would strike him down. Secondly, they were hoping that maybe the Sanhedrin put him to death. Thirdly, they were hoping that it would create a political backlash, that people would reject him and at least remove him from power.
Uh-huh. Sounds like today.
Yeah. So,
History repeats itself.
yeah, but just imagine the most successful of the governors. If he fell, what would have meant for people trying to return to the Holy Land to build a second temple? Right? So this is a pivotal chapter. By the time we finish this chapter, we're going to realize, again, God saved Israel. Thank God. So he refuses to come. He again stands strong. Now, verse 12, Va'akira, v'hine lo Elohim shalacho, ki hanavua diber alai v'tovia v'sanbalat zecharo. Okay, please translate to verse 12, Linda.
Then I realized that, behold, God had not sent him, for he had spoken, for he had spoken as if it were a prophecy for me. Rather, Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him.
Right.
He had a flash of insight from Hashem.
Mm-hmm. So thank God. So I mean, this is so profound that he's making policy based on what is right or wrong, not based on the pressure of the nations. Right. So therefore, he was not susceptible to the maneuver to try to destroy him. As we talked before, focus on Torah and ethics. The Tanakh says 20 times, Mishpat Tzedakah. Have justice and righteousness. So it's very important, and thank God we just keep focus on Torah and ethics, on morals and ethics, and God will bless our way. Okay. Now, verse 13. Laman sahur hu laman ira v'asech kein v'chatasi. Vaya lahem l'shem ra laman yecharfuni. Okay, please translate verse 13.
It was because he was a hireling, so that I would be frightened, comply in sin, so that they would have a scandal with which to humiliate me.
So at the very least, I think Nehemiah may be judging them fairly. At the very least, they wanted to destroy him politically. But apparently they were hoping for more champing at the bit for worse to befall him. Zachar lahai l'tovia l'sanbalat k'ma'asav eleh v'gam l'no'adya Hanaviyah Ulieser Hanaviyim Asher Hayu Mayorim Osi. Please translate 14.
My God, recall for Tobiah and Sanballat these deeds of his, and also for Noadiah the prophetess and the rest of the false prophets who tried to humiliate me,
Intimidate.
intimidate me.
Right. So it wasn't just this one uh possible prophet that he went to. It was a series of people with a possible link to prophecy not yet proven, who came and warned him that if he doesn't do this, it's dire consequences. But Nehemiah was certain of the halacha. He knew the Jewish law. To ask him to do this was not likely to be from God. Okay, let's go to verse 15. Okay, let's see. Vatishlam hachoma בעשרים וחמישה לאלול לחמישים ושניים יום, ויהי כאשר שמעו כל אויבינו ויראו כל הגויים אשר סביבנו, ויבהו מאוד בעיניהם, וידעו כי מאת אלוהינו נעשתה המלאכה הזאת. Please translate verses 15 and 16.
The wall was completed on the 25th of Elul after 52 days. It happened when all our enemies heard this and all the nations around us saw, they fell greatly in their own eyes, for they realized that this work was accomplished by our God.
And just in time for Rosh Hashanah, the 5 days later. So God has a good sense of time. But it was in an era without machines, construction machines. In a few months, they were able to complete the entire wall surrounding, as I said, the greater old city of Jerusalem, twice the size of the current old city. So that was a miracle as well. Okay, 17. Gam bayimim hahem marbim chorei Yehuda igrosehem holchos al tovia va'asher latovia ba'os alehem ki rabim biYehuda ba'alei shavua lo ki chasan hu lishachanya ven arach v'hochanan beno lakach espas Meshulam ben Berechia gam tov osav gam tov osav hayu omrim lefanai dvarai hayu motziim lo igros shalach tovia liareni. Please translate verses 17, 18, and 19. Complete the chapter.
But even in those days, the aristocrats of Judah wrote many letters addressed to Tobiah, and Tobias came to them. For many people in Judah had sworn allegiance to him because he was the son-in-law of Shechani, son of Ara, and his son Jehonahan had married the daughter of Meshulam, son of Berechiah. They also would recite his merits before me and passed along my remarks to him, and Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me.
And that is the last mention of Tobiah as a real threat in this book. So Nehemiah continued to be steadfast in his faith towards God, his allegiance to halacha, his ethical and moral bearing, and just by his force of will, he was able to protect Jerusalem that way as well. It wasn't just a physical wall. So obviously he must have been keeping religious practices like reciting of Tehillim Psalms and things like this to steel himself so he could be strong enough to bear this onslaught. But because of his efforts, so then the Second Temple era was solidified and would last for 420 years. So this occurred starting in the 20th year after the start of the Second Temple era, really. Um, so there's at least another 400 years before this new commonwealth would come to an end. So that's pretty profound. So now we understand why God named a book in Tanakh after him. Okay, any questions? All right, so yeah, so it's a great metaphor. Just however religious or not, probably it's easier if a person is of faith, but however religious or not, the leaders of Israel should be strong and not give in, and they'll be blessed by God.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Any questions before we call it a session?
Hey, come on.
Any questions? All right. Thank you for learning with me.
I got
Oh,
Thank
we
you,
have a
Rabbi.
question.